Zimbabwe has become the latest African country to welcome Elon Musk's internet service provider.
Zimbabweans are capable of spearheading game-changing, first-of-a-kind innovations that challenge the world's traditional ways of doing things. President Mnangagwa said no one can take away that capability.
A new tech company has just made its debut in the South African nation of Zimbabwe. Thanks to inventor Maxwell Chikumbutso, Africa is now producing an estimated 30,000 self-powering cars using groundbreaking technology that doesn't rely on fuel or charging stations.
Chikumbutso's groundbreaking innovations, he calls it a self-powering electric vehicle.
This game-changing invention will disrupt the global auto industry, especially for electric car giants like Tesla. With billions invested in batteries and charging infrastructure, how will Elon Musk take the news? And will this new tech shoot Africa to the top of the automotive industry? Join us as we reveal the Zimbabwean invention threatening Musk's empire. Self-powering tech revolution from Zimbabwe. Africa is stepping into a new era of car manufacturing, and it's happening faster than most people expected. For years, the continent has been seen as a place where cars are mostly imported, with only a few countries assembling vehicles locally. But that story is changing. Countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa have significantly progressed in local automobile production. But something extraordinary is happening in Zimbabwe, something that could completely change transportation in Africa and worldwide. The catch is that Elon Musk is not happy about it. You see, while most of the world is pushing for electric vehicles, Africa doesn't even have charging infrastructure that is scarce. Electricity supply is unreliable in many areas, and the cost of lithium batteries remains high. So the Zimbabweans came up with something that will blow your mind. Keep watching to find out. Since there is limited electricity and weak charging infrastructure, Africans have found it difficult to embrace electric cars. But what if there was a way to power a vehicle without fuel or even plug it into an outlet? That's exactly what Zimbabwean inventor Maxwell Chikumbutso came up with. He has created a self-powered car without gasoline, diesel, or even traditional electricity. Instead, it relies on energy from radio waves. At first, the idea of a car powered by radio waves might sound unbelievable. But this is real technology.
An electric car which he says converts radio frequencies into energy.
The key to this invention lies in a revolutionary micronic energy device, a system that can capture and convert radio frequencies into continuous electrical energy. So how does it work? Well, it's quite simple. The car can generate power with access to these frequencies, eliminating the need for external charging or refueling. Unlike conventional electric vehicles, which require extensive charging infrastructure, this technology bypasses that limitation completely. This invention will change the face of African transportation in ways we could never imagine. Africans have always depended on fuel for transportation. Many African nations rely on imported fuel, which drives transportation costs and makes it expensive for people to move around. Even for those considering electric vehicles, charging stations are rare outside of major cities, and the high cost of electricity can still make owning an EV impractical. But if cars could power themselves, all of these concerns would disappear. People would no longer have to worry about fluctuating fuel prices, power outages affecting charging, or the high cost of batteries. Aside from personal vehicles, this technology could transform public transportation. In most African cities, minibuses and taxis are the backbone of urban mobility. These vehicles operate daily, consuming large amounts of fuel and contributing to pollution. If self-powered technology were applied to public transport, it could drastically lower costs for operators and passengers alike. Taxi drivers wouldn't need to spend money on fuel. Bus fares could drop.
Those EVs are well known for saving money on gas.
And air pollution in crowded cities could be significantly reduced. That's not all. The benefits would also extend to rural areas, where transportation has always been a struggle. Many remote villages cannot access gas because they are far from gas stations. Farmers often face challenges getting their produce to markets, and students sometimes walk long distances to school due to a lack of affordable transportation. A self-powered vehicle could change all of that. These cars could provide reliable transportation in even the most isolated regions without fuel or charging stations. Medical teams could reach rural communities more easily, businesses could expand their reach, and mobility would become accessible to a much larger population and economy. Africa spends billions of dollars each year on fuel imports. A shift toward self-powered vehicles could redirect that money into local economies instead. Manufacturing such cars locally would also create jobs, boost technological innovation, and position Africa as a leader in clean energy transportation. If the technology proves scalable, it could even turn Africa into an exporter of self-powered vehicles, which Elon Musk doesn't want to see. Remember, Musk has poured billions into electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. He believes that Tesla will dominate the future of mobility and clean energy. But Africa's breakthrough in alternative energy-powered cars, like Maxwell Chikumbutso's micronic energy device, challenges that vision.
We have invented in Zimbabwe, it is called a microsonic energy device.
The scale at which this tech will change the world will surprise you, and that's where we are headed. Maxwell's invention and the rest of the world. For starters, Africa has been flooded with imported used cars for decades. Many vehicles on the continent's roads started their lives in Europe, Asia, or North America before being shipped off to African ports. Let's face it, these second-hand imports have been an affordable option for many, but they come with problems such as high maintenance costs, lack of spare parts, and environmental concerns due to older, high-emission engines. But Maxwell's invention shows that the tide is turning. Africa is no longer just a consumer of foreign-made vehicles. It's becoming a manufacturer in its own right. A new era is coming, where African nations are designing and building cars tailored to their needs, industries, and economies. Aside from Zimbabwe, other countries have emerged as leaders in this transformation. Take Morocco, for instance, which has a large vehicle manufacturing industry and exports cars to Europe and beyond. With production plants from international giants like Renault and Stellantis, Morocco also assembles cars and produces parts and components. The country's strategic location and trade agreements have made it a key hub for European car exports. Then comes South Africa. South Africa has a strong industrial base, and major brands like BMW, Volkswagen, and Toyota have operated manufacturing plants there for years, exporting vehicles to different parts of the world. But beyond foreign manufacturers, local brands like Mereza are beginning to emerge, aiming to create cars specifically designed for African conditions. South Africa's combination of skilled labor, established infrastructure, and government incentives has kept its automotive industry thriving and positioned it as a regional leader. If you feel inspired by Morocco and South Africa's achievements, the next country we want to reveal will blow your mind: Nigeria. Africa's most populous country is another rising force in vehicle manufacturing. With a rapidly growing middle class and an increasing demand for locally made products, Nigeria has taken bold steps to reduce dependence on used car imports. Companies like Inventor Vehicle Manufacturing produce cars, buses, and trucks designed to benefit the African consumer.
These big buses you are seeing here lined up, this is where they are all produced.
By focusing on durability, affordability, and easy maintenance, these vehicles address the unique challenges of African roads, which often include rough terrains and extreme weather conditions. The Nigerian government has also introduced policies to encourage local production, reducing tariffs on locally made vehicles while imposing higher duties on imported used cars. What sets African-made vehicles apart is their design, which considers local conditions. Unlike many imported cars that struggle with poor road infrastructure, extreme heat, and inconsistent fuel quality, vehicles produced in Africa are built for these challenges. For example, many locally made cars have reinforced suspensions to handle rough and unpaved roads. Engines are designed to run efficiently on the fuel type available in African markets, reducing dependency on expensive imported fuel grades. Some manufacturers also incorporate solar-powered features, addressing energy challenges in regions with common fuel and electricity shortages. The shift to manufacturing vehicles locally has created massive jobs, from factory workers assembling cars to engineers designing new models and business owners distributing vehicles across the continent. Thousands of direct and indirect jobs are being created, providing opportunities for young Africans to develop engineering, mechanics, and high-tech manufacturing skills. But there is no guarantee that Zimbabwe's self-driven cars will take over the market soon, and you are about to find out why. Keep watching. Challenges with Zimbabwe's self-driven cars. Zimbabwe is making bold moves, but like any revolution, challenges come with progress. While self-powering and locally manufactured vehicles are shaking up the market, the journey ahead is far from smooth. As the world moves toward cleaner energy, Africa is exploring multiple options. Electric vehicles have gained traction with companies in South Africa and Nigeria that are working on local production. But EVs come with challenges, such as expensive lithium-ion batteries and a lack of charging stations in many parts of the continent. This is where self-powered cars, like those developed in Zimbabwe, provide a groundbreaking alternative. Using radio waves or other renewable energy sources, these vehicles don't need charging altogether. Meanwhile, some African countries focus on biofuels, using crops like sugarcane and jatropha to produce cleaner fuel alternatives. With an abundance of natural resources, Africa has the potential to lead in sustainable vehicle technology without relying on foreign energy sources. The question is whether governments and private investors will push hard enough to make these options mainstream. The good news is that Africa's auto industry isn't isolated. Global automakers are beginning to recognize the potential of the continent's growing market. European and Asian companies are partnering with African manufacturers to set up local plants and production lines. We mentioned earlier that Morocco has attracted major investments from Renault and Stellantis, while South Africa remains a key hub for global brands. But as African automakers rise, the balance of power could shift. Local companies are working on cars designed specifically for African roads and conditions, making them more appealing than imported models. Foreign automakers may have to rethink their strategies if self-powered vehicles become widely adopted. Will they partner with African innovators or compete against them? That remains to be seen. That is not all. Despite the progress, Zimbabwe's self-powered vehicles may not reach the markets in large quantities. That's because of the supply chain. Many parts used in Zimbabwe-made vehicles are still imported. That means production costs are high and vulnerable to global disruptions. To be a real game changer, they must develop a local supply chain for key components like microchips and steel, but it requires significant investment. Talking about money, Zimbabwe doesn't seem to have much of it currently. The problem doesn't end with that. Many African governments have no plan to support the automotive industry and ensure safety and environmental standards. Most countries have outdated policies that make it difficult for local car manufacturers to compete with imports, so Zimbabwe has to develop clearer, business-friendly policies to help local automakers scale production and reach a wider market. That reminds us of the state of infrastructure in Africa. Many African roads are in poor condition, and transportation networks are underdeveloped. Without proper infrastructure, even the best cars can struggle to reach customers. Zimbabwe must invest heavily in road networks to support the long-term success of the industry. Don't be fooled by the problems. Africa's automotive industry is still heading towards its peak. Countries are learning from each other, adapting new technologies, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. With innovations like self-powered vehicles, Africa has the potential to leap ahead of traditional auto markets like Tesla and Toyota. Will Africa become a global leader in sustainable car production? Can local automakers outpace imports and dominate the market? We can't answer for certain, but one certain thing is that the revolution is only beginning, and the world is watching closely. Ip Man and Bruce Lee, two legendary names that forever changed the world of martial arts. As master and student, their bond seemed unshakable, with Bruce learning the secrets of Wing Chun under Ip Man's guidance.
Following the success of Ip Man, the biopic based on the Wing Chun grandmaster and mentor to Bruce Lee.
But behind the scenes, things weren't as harmonious as they appeared. Tensions arose, leading Ip Man to make the shocking decision to stop teaching his most famous pupil. What caused this unexpected rift? Was it personal, cultural, or something even deeper? The truth behind their split remains one of the most intriguing mysteries in martial arts history, and it's a story you won't want to miss. Life on the streets of Hong Kong. Growing up in the 1950s, Hong Kong was far from an easy ride for a young Bruce. The city was bustling, with narrow streets filled with noise, energy, and a blend of old customs and new influences.
Born in the U.S. and raised in Hong Kong, Bruce Lee trained as an actor and martial artist.
Hong Kong was a melting pot where Western ideas brushed shoulders with deep-rooted Chinese traditions. On one side, you'd see the modern shops and neon lights beginning to pop up. On the other, there was an undercurrent of old-world values and tough street life. For many teenagers, including Bruce, the streets were both a playground and a battleground. In the midst of this urban chaos, Bruce found himself hanging out with groups known as Teddy Boys. These weren't formal gangs, but rather clusters of youngsters who looked for identity, respect, or just a good adrenaline rush by creating their own rules. His mixed heritage sometimes made him stand out, and while that wasn't always a bad thing, it also meant that he had to fight for acceptance. Sometimes his looks, blending Chinese features with hints of European ancestry, made him a target for teasing or exclusion by those who clung tightly to tradition. Even so, Bruce turned any challenge into fuel for his ever-growing determination. In a city where every day brought new encounters, Bruce experienced life at full throttle. The energy of the streets, the mix of Western styles and Eastern traditions, and the constant dance between performance and real struggle all played a role in shaping his character. The rough and ready environment of Hong Kong instilled in him the need to become more than just a flash in the pan. It set him on a path to seek real discipline, a path that would eventually lead him into the intricate world of martial arts.
The one, the only, the immortal, Bruce Lee.
He was a martial arts revolutionary and Hollywood pioneer,
where true skill was measured by control, technique, and respect for the art itself. The awakening. It wasn't long before Bruce began to see that his street brawls and movie set pranks could only take him so far when it came to real fighting. As he grew older, the playful scraps with friends started to evolve into real confrontations. There was a point when he realized that raw strength and rebellious bravado were not everything. What he really needed was a systematic way to sharpen his skills, something that would give him an edge both on the streets and later in life, when he was already carving out a reputation for his moves. This realization marked the start of a deeper search for martial arts training that went beyond what he had picked up from the local street fights. At that time, many young people in Hong Kong faced conflict on everyday grounds, whether they were going head-to-head with rivals or simply trying to protect their honor. Bruce had witnessed firsthand the difference between a quick scrap and a well-timed strike that could turn the tide of a fight. While his early life in the film world had taught him dramatic flair, it was the hard-knock lessons from the street that pushed him to seek something more substantial. He wanted a fighting method that wasn't just about style, but about efficiency, timing, and power in close-quarters combat. The spark for that real change in Bruce's life came when he started learning about Wing Chun, a martial art known for its practicality and simplicity in turbulent situations. People around him, like some of the older kids who already practiced it, had started to notice that Wing Chun wasn't just another form of fighting. It was a system that emphasized structure, balance, and the effective use of every movement. Bruce began to understand that if he wanted to be more than just a street tough, He would need to embrace a style that demanded hard work, discipline, and respect for each technique. Meeting William Chung. In the search for a structured martial arts training, Bruce's path crossed with that of William Chung.
Bruce Lee, for 4.5 years, he trained in Wing Chun.
A guy a few years older who was already making a name for himself in the local Wing Chun scene. William was respected not only for his skills, but also for his dedication and seriousness in training. When Bruce saw what William could do, it wasn't long before he wanted in. William Chung had become more than just a local fighter. He was a gateway into a world where technique and discipline mattered more than flashy moves. For Bruce, meeting William was like opening a door to a whole new level of fighting. William had been training in Wing Chun for a while under the guidance of a respected master. His movements were precise, and he knew how to use close combat techniques to handle even the toughest opponents in Hong Kong's alleys. Bruce, with his boundless energy and restless nature, was immediately drawn to this style. He saw in William not just an older, tougher guy, but a mentor who could show him the ropes of a more disciplined approach to conflict. It wasn't just about winning a fight. It was about learning a way to be confident, to control one's body, and to develop that inner sense of calm that could make all the difference when a punch was thrown. As their friendship grew, William took Bruce under his wing, giving him access to a world that wasn't as familiar to most of his peers. William's group of fellow practitioners had already started to explore the practical benefits of Wing Chun, and Bruce was eager to learn alongside them. This wasn't just about mimicking moves, it was about understanding the essence of the techniques. Even if Bruce sometimes came off as flashier or more carefree, behind his confident exterior was a burning desire to master a fighting system that could stand up to any challenge. His time with William Chung laid the groundwork for what would become a lifelong pursuit of martial arts mastery. Entering the world of Wing Chun with Ip Man. With William Chung acting as his guide, Bruce soon found himself stepping into the inner circle of Wing Chun, a world where the discipline of body and mind was the true measure of a fighter. At the center of this world was Ip Man, a revered master who had brought Wing Chun from Foshan to Hong Kong. Ip Man wasn't just any teacher. He carried with him an aura of calm authority and a reputation built on years of dedicated practice. His teaching was rooted in both physical technique and a deeper philosophy that spoke to the idea of constant learning and adaptation. While Ip Man's main classes took place in a quiet household setting in Hong Kong, where tradition and humility were expected, Bruce's style didn't quite fit the mold. He was impulsive and full of youthful energy, traits that didn't immediately win over the seasoned practitioners. Yet, there was a spark behind his antics, a genuine hunger for improvement. Ip Man, aware of the delicate balance between strict training methods and encouraging raw talent, made a choice. Rather than squashing Bruce's enthusiasm, he allowed him to continue learning, but with a twist. Bruce was gradually redirected away from the full group sessions in a bid to reduce the friction his behavior caused. This meant that Bruce would mainly train with one of Ip Man's top students rather than be immersed in the formal setting of Ip Man's house. The decision wasn't made lightly. Ip Man had a strong sense of preserving the class atmosphere and did not want discord among the students to undermine the teaching process. Yet, he also recognized that Bruce's progress could not be halted. In a way, this move marked both a setback and an opportunity.
Lee's Wing Chun is very different than ours. It's basically still muscular way of generating power.
While Bruce was now somewhat distanced from the master himself, the arrangement ensured that he continued to receive focused training, soaking in the essence of Wing Chun through a different lens. Training under Wang Shun Leung. After Bruce was steered away from Ip Man's central classes, his training really kicked into high gear under Wang Shun Leung, a top student in Ip Man's circle known for his practical fighting skills and quick reflexes. Wang Shun Leung had earned a reputation on the streets of Hong Kong as someone who knew how to mix disciplined technique with a fighter's instinct. For Bruce, training with Wang turned out to be an eye-opening experience that pushed him to rethink his approach to combat. Wong wasn't just a teacher, he was a challenger. His methods were straightforward, focusing on real fights rather than ceremonial forms. This suited Bruce just fine, as he had always been more about action than theory. From the start, Bruce was eager to learn everything he could from Wong. He'd show up with his typical flair, sometimes sporting slicked-back hair and cool sunglasses that made him look like he had stepped out of a movie. But it wasn't just his looks that caught Wong's attention. It was the relentless hunger in Bruce's eyes. He wanted to be the best, not just fight for style, but to outdo everyone around him. Despite the clear talent Bruce had, his competitive nature often got the best of him. He started pushing boundaries early on by playing pranks to secure more one-on-one time with Wong. He'd sometimes be the first to show up at training sessions and even claim that classes were canceled so that he could make an extra effort to learn from Wong individually. While this approach occasionally rubbed other students the wrong way, it was also a sign of Bruce's urgency and his desire to fast-track his progress. Wong Shunleung's training regimen was intense and pragmatic. He taught Bruce the importance of tight, efficient movements and the idea that every strike counted. There wasn't any wasted motion in his lessons. Rather than endless repetitions of forms, they focused on drills that simulated real situations, quick footwork, rapid hand techniques, and the kind of sensitivity needed to respond to an opponent's moves. This was all about making sure that technique met timing. For Bruce, it was a trial-by-fire experience that honed his natural athletic gifts and sharpened his combat instincts. Conflict and the turning point. As Bruce's skill sharpened under Wong Shunleung's guidance, the growing gap between him and the rest of the students started to show. His natural talent and unbridled enthusiasm were both a blessing and a curse. In a traditional martial arts setting, respect and humility were as critical as fighting ability. Bruce's high-spirited antics, pranks, and constant pursuit of extra lessons began to put him at odds with some of the more seasoned students in the Wing Chun school. Many of these students, who had put in years of hard work, felt that Bruce's behavior was disruptive and showed a lack of proper respect for the discipline. Apart from his boisterous nature, Bruce's mixed heritage also fueled tension. Being of Eurasian descent in a tightly knit, tradition-bound environment sometimes made him an easy target for those who clung to the original ideas of a pure lineage of martial arts. Some of the older students, who had trained long and hard without the advantages that Bruce's youthful swagger seemed to afford him, started to view him as an outsider. They were not just upset by his tricks, but also by the idea that he was receiving any extra attention while ignoring long-standing traditions. The frustration among the students grew, and soon, the collective pressure was enough to reach the ears of Ip Man. Faced with the possibility of a disrupted learning environment, Ip Man made a tough decision. Instead of expelling Bruce outright, he decided to keep him away from the main classes that took place in his personal home. This decision was a way to honor the strict discipline of the group while still preserving Bruce's progress. It was a bittersweet moment. On one hand, Bruce was separated from the direct, nurturing environment of Ip Man's lessons. On the other, he was given the chance to continue training one-on-one with Wong Shunleung, taking his lessons to an even more personalized level. The path to Jeet Kune Do. After years of structured training and numerous setbacks in the traditional setting, Bruce found himself at a crossroads. With a solid base in Wing Chun and an ever-growing list of skills honed under various teachers, he began to see that there was no single formula for success on the streets or in the ring. The experiences he gathered, from the strict teachings of Ip Man to the practical, sometimes rough lessons from Wong Shunleung, had all contributed to a growing realization. Bruce understood that true fighting was not just about memorizing techniques, but about finding what worked best for the individual, adapting techniques as needed, and constantly evolving. This insight led Bruce to step away from a fixed style. He started exploring other systems and techniques outside the realm of Wing Chun alone. He began studying Western boxing, eventually picking up on ideas like footwork and timing that were different from the traditional Chinese approach. Bruce also took an interest in fencing and other martial disciplines that seemed to offer a different perspective on movement and reaction. In many ways, his approach to learning became like a personal experiment. He would test various ideas, mix and match drills, and then refine them based on what felt natural and effective. Thank you for staying with us. Do you think Maxwell's invention will be welcomed in the West? Share your opinions with us in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen, and you will enjoy it.